And teaching kids problem-solving skills means that we're encouraging them to be creative, to use the parts of their brain that tend to get squashed when we focus on filling in the little bubbles on tests or writing that 5-paragraph essay exactly like 5 paragraphs. Mm-hmm. So all those creative aspects get squashed. And how cool is it if kids have an opportunity to create apps or to create groups or to create, almost anything that can be available through technology. Give them the wherewithal and the skills, and they're the ones who are going to be the entrepreneurs to create awesome, amazing things that will, get us to Mars or get us down to the bottom of the ocean or whatever it might be. So
exactly. It's interesting that you say that when you talk about the bubbles on the test or writing the 5 paragraphs. Back when I was in school, we talked about, vomiting up the answers. Like, what does the teacher want me to regurgitate exactly what I just learned? Right. And really, it's not a very interesting or fun way to learn. However, that is the school system that we're working with predominantly.
Yeah.
Not every school system, but certainly a lot of them. So tell me what, as a parenting coach, school success, how does that marry into, and do you work with the guidance counselors, or I'm a little muddled on how you would fit into school success?
So my many years of being a school teacher and working with thousands of kids over the years have given me a pretty good background, I would say, in understanding what a lot of the school issues are. And for some school issues, kids just simply need to have a specialist working with them. They have an IEP and they have an issue that really needs to be dealt with in that way. A lot of kids struggle because they can't just sit still all day long. And it could be an 8-year-old we're talking about, or it could be an 18-year-old we're talking about. And honestly, when they get out of school, that 18-year-old is going to go find a job where they're on their feet and moving and doing things. They are not going to be attracted to the kinds of jobs where they sit behind a desk.
Right.
And so this was another one of my pet peeves about the school system. And basically, I'm not going to go into my pet peeves. I'm going to give parents some strategies. So here's the first thing. Be your child's advocate whenever possible. But do it in a way that does not alienate or undermine the teacher. Mm-hmm. So you need to support what your school system says is the way things are, but behind your child's back, you can go question and say, I'm really struggling with why this is happening. Can you please explain it to me in a really calm, not a way that will put a teacher or a principal or somebody on the defensive. But it is your right to ask questions about the way things are being done. Just don't do it in front of your child, because you need to have a united front.
Yep.
In front of your child. You do. Yeah. You can't. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're teaching your child that they don't have to submit to authority. And let's face it, we all have to submit to authority. You submit to your boss, you submit to the police officer, so that's an important skill. So anyway, that being said, you are your child's advocate. If people are not listening to you, then you go into the school and you can start banging desks. That happens sometimes. Sometimes it's necessary. You're banging on the desk. Say, you got to listen to me. This is not working for my child. What can we do to make things better for my child? And I can help parents assess whether or not that's the kind of thing that they need to do.
Right.
The other thing is a lot of parents that you and I may be familiar with have these grand ideas of what their child is capable of. Mm-hmm. And they may not be based in reality, or they may not be based in who their child really is. Mm-hmm. And so the thing is, you don't set your child up for failure. Allow him or her to be who they are, not who you dream they would be. Mm-hmm. Don't overmanage, don't overmanage their activities, don't overmanage their homework, don't overmanage their class levels. Like, I'm going to give you a couple of stories about myself. Okay. So we had one child who was taking, mostly high-level classes and got to 10th grade and started having panic attacks in the middle of the night. And we were trying to figure out what was going on. Why was this happening? She couldn't go to sleep, and what was the story? And I wish I had known then what I know now. And the real issue, we got some help, and the real issue was that she was overscheduled. And, whether it was her trying to live up to my expectations or me imposing my expectations. I don't know. But the point was, we got some help. We realized that she didn't have to do everything that she was doing. She dropped some things, and lo and behold, the panic attacks went away. Yeah. So we also had another child who had difficulty transitioning from what was really easy in elementary school to the greater demands of, honestly, busy work in 6th grade. And it became a real struggle every day to sit down at the kitchen table and get him to do his darn homework. And again, I wish I had known then what I know now. And being the wonderful parent that I was at the time, after too much passive aggressiveness over several weeks, I finally just said, just suck it up and do the homework. So that was probably not the best way to handle that particular situation. And so in both cases, I can wave at myself in the mirror and say, this was not an easy thing for me, and we've had to learn. The long and the short of it is, you need to support your child. Oh, and what I was going to tell you about that younger child, too, is by the time he got to high school, we realized that he was capable of taking most of the high-level classes, but he did not want to. And what he wanted to do instead was really, he had his own vision for how he wanted to spend his time after school every day, and it wasn't to sit and do hours and hours of homework that he felt was busy work.
Okay, well, that's I can imagine maybe he wanted to play Nintendo or he wanted to go horseback riding, but how do you marry that with success in school?
He took a couple of higher level classes, but not as many as he could have. He intentionally took a few. We have 3 levels in our high school.
Gotcha.
So he took a couple of the higher level classes, mostly mid-level classes.
Gotcha.
And what he did was, he didn't come home and play Nintendo.
Yeah.
He's a musician, and so he practiced his instrument, and he taught himself by watching YouTube videos how to create music. And so he is now actually studying at a prestigious university because it's in a major that he taught himself that no one teaches in school. Amazing. And that is contemporary music composition by writing music on his computer. And, they don't teach that in the school.
No, not yet. Not yet. And that, when you mentioned before about entrepreneurism or entrepreneurial initiatives,
right,
the saving grace of our economy and so forth, all I could think about was the word pioneer. Entrepreneur could be today's pioneer.
Yeah.
Beating back the bushes, going for the new frontier, seeing what's possible out there, and there's gold in them bare hills, Yeah. Is that what you're aiming at when you say entrepreneur in the future? And
yeah, I mean, kids just need to experiment. They need to have the time to experiment and find out what's important to them. Now, of course, you're going to run into some kids, and I know some people like this, who say, my kid is not interested in anything. They just come home and they sit around and either do nothing or they just do video games. And that's the kind of thing that I would coach parents through because, we don't want that to happen either. We want kids to feel a sense of purpose. Yeah. And so we need to help them find that purpose.
Right, right.
But, I want to talk a little bit more about school, too, just because I think that it's such an issue. I know we can't talk a whole lot longer, but let me throw a few more things out of here. Bad habits. Kids have a lot of bad habits when it comes to studying. And the brain science says that you are not actually capable of multitasking. Instead, what you do is your brain switch tasks. In other words, it's thinking about one thing and then it thinks about another and then it thinks about this one and it thinks about another. It cannot think about both things at the same time. It's literally impossible because of the way our brains are set up. And so what happens is as you're switching back and forth, then every time you come back, it takes a moment to refocus and figure out, now where was I? What was I doing? And so you lose focus, you lose time, you're not at your best. And so I hate to say this, but need their parents to take some of the distractions away. And the earlier you can do that, the better, starting at 11 or 12. Because if they get to 16 and they're used to having their cell phone on and their Facebook open and blah, 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 they're going to think, I know how to do this. I'm cool. I know how to do this. You don't need to teach me. And by 16, that's kind of hard to take that away. You could if the grades are bad. Right. But, if they're getting B's and C's and they're happy with that, It's kind of too late to take it away at that point.
But if they were at 12 or 13 were used to just focusing on homework for the next hour and a half and then take a break or?
Yes, taking a break is huge. Your brain needs, it should be age appropriate. So if you've got younger kids, maybe, or a kid with ADD or ADHD, maybe 20 or 30 minutes is all they can handle at one time. Set the timer and then do, 5 to 10 minutes of something completely different, and then get back into it again. And they have to be willing to do this. They have to be willing to take their 10 minutes and come back and get back into it. But what happens is your brain processes the information while you're taking a break.
Really?
Yeah, it needs time to process. And if you're just trying to pack too much into it, I find that I do this to myself all the time. I look at my watch and say, oh my gosh, I've been sitting here for 2 hours. I forgot to set my timer. And then I stand up and I take a little break. I come back. I'm ready to dive in. It's much easier.
Oh, interesting. So you say even if you're taking that 10-minute microwave popcorn break or something, and you're not thinking about the math problems,
it's processing.
The math problems are still percolating in there. And some. Okay, good.
Yep. And in fact, I know kids don't want to hear this either because they would much rather cram at the last minute. But the brain science is also definitive in this way. If you study for 20 minutes every day for 5 days, that is much better than studying for an hour and a half the day before. Because what happens again is your brain has more time to process, and it really processes a lot while you're sleeping. So the more times you give your brain to process during sleep, the better you're going to know that material. And actually, they've discovered the way to do it is kind of every day for 3 or 4 days, and then take a couple days off, and then come back and do it another day or two, and then take another couple of days off, and then come back another week later. So, ideally, if you want to really learn something, it'll take you 2 months, and you spread it out with initial, intensity, and then spreading it out and coming back to it on a regular basis. And that's how you memorize things. That's how you learn things. That's how your brain works best.
Wow, that is really interesting. I really like that. There's a lot that's being uncovered recently, at least what I'm reading about the benefits of sleep. And one of them is even weight loss.
Yes, absolutely.
People who aren't sleeping enough are packing on weight. It's very interesting. I don't remember some of the causes for that, but I'm just recalling that sleep seems to be much more of a health hygiene that we should really pay much more attention to.
Yes, and they're actually calling it now sleep hygiene.
Are they?
It's called sleep hygiene. And another reason, one last thing about, one last issue with school, and then I've got at least one solution. One last issue is kids avoid homework. I look at my son in 6th grade. They avoid homework. There are a couple of reasons for this. One is it's boring to them. Another is it's becoming more challenging, so they have to work a little harder, and they may not be used to having to work harder.
Yeah.
Thirdly, it's cumulative, which means that if you miss a day or two, you're going to have trouble catching up. So accumulation is tough. And they're afraid of failing, and we could go into a long thing. Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, which talks about the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. You want to look it up. If we don't have time to get into it right now, but you want to cultivate a growth mindset so that your child is not afraid of taking risks and failing. They shouldn't be penalized every time they make a mistake, which is another problem with our school system. And then the last part of this is that they don't eat right and they don't sleep right. And so all of that is key to why kids avoid doing homework. If you can start to fix some of those problems, you will be able to help your child be more successful. And here's one tip to be able to help solve at least some of those problems, and that is to hire a homework buddy. Not necessarily a tutor, but maybe an older child. Like if your kid's in middle school, hire a high school student.
Wow.
High school, hire a college student, where they sit and they study together regularly.
Yeah.
They just sit and study. Maybe they meet them in the library. Maybe the homework buddy comes over. But it just, it's almost like a babysitter for your kid to do homework. That way it's not coming from you, the parent.
Right.
And the homework buddy is saying, hey, I'm working. You got to work too.
I love that idea. Yeah. I really love that idea.
Yep.
Wow. Well, I'd like to just end up, if we could, by talking about, I'm a parent, I'm watching this, I'm like, This is fascinating. I need to know more. I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to call you. What's going to happen after you say, hello, this is Deborah Owen?
Sure. So what we'll do is we'll get together and we'll have a family success planning conversation, which is totally complimentary. And in this conversation, what we'll do is we'll spend some time talking about your family and what your concerns are. We'll identify what some of the overt symptoms might be. What do you see? What do you hear? What's really going on? We'll start to look at, we won't have time to get into it deeply in a first conversation, but we'll start to take a look at what some of the underlying problems might really be. And I can get into that in a personal conversation. We're kind of running out of time here. And then I'll also ask you what your dreams and visions for your home life are. What do you want to see in your home life? What do you hold as the vision for your child? And I don't mean what career are they going to have or what college are they going to go to. I mean, what kind of a person do you really want them to be? And how, then we start to make plans for how are we going to get from where we are right now, what the reality that you're living, to the dreams of what you really want to see for your family life and for your child. And so we'll begin to think about how can we create a plan for that. And that's what our first session is all about. And if this is something that you like and you want to continue working with me on, I'd be happy to do that. If not, I'll make sure you have at least one or two really strong things that you can take home and apply right away.
So that first complimentary hour, I'm going to be guaranteed to walk away with a couple of things that's going to make a difference for my life right then.
Yeah, something. We'll come up with something that will make a difference.
And then if we determine that a more ongoing relationship with you to kind of help coach us and get hitting the ball out of the park, we can take it to that next level. Well, that's
right. My goal is to help create a lot less stress in your home life so that you and your child and your partner can all be successful at home, at school, and at your own place of work.
Oh, I love it. Sounds great. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today.
Yep.
This has been really, really helpful. I learned tons. And actually, when I get off of this call, what I'm going to go look up is 21st century problems, like problem solving, because I've heard you say that before, and it's just an interesting concept. So
it's 21st century skills. It's a key part of our educational system at this point. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to look that up.
Good.
And like I say, a more peaceful home. Who doesn't want that?
That's right.
We certainly didn't sit around in our younger days going, gee, I hope I have some children that really make me want to tear my hair out. That's not what we wanted. We imagined kind of apple picking and lovely times. And so it sounds like you're able to help bridge that gap. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Wendy, this was great. Thank you so much for this conversation. I would encourage people to check out my book, Social Media Fascination. Check me out online at youcanraisegreatkids.com. And I'll give you a chance for one more plug. What's your website too?
Sure. I'm a marriage educator, and I'd love to talk with you sometime more about what that might mean.
Yep.
And it is www.connectagain.org.
Excellent.
Thanks again.
All right. Thanks a lot, Wendy. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.